Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Star Wars The Expanded Universe Book Talk with Dorn Geek. Hope everybody's doing well today. We are going to get into the second book of the Jedi Academy trilogy. I couldn't get that out. We're going to get into the second book of the Jedi Academy trilogy, Dark Apprentice. Here we go. That's right. We are talking Dark Apprentice today. And Dark Apprentice is published in June of 1994. Okay. So we're talking June 1994. And we're talking shortly, not a lot of time has gone by since the release of the first book. Written again by Kevin J. Anderson, the whole trilogy written by Kevin J. Anderson, of course. This trilogy and this book in particular was a really big moment, at least for me personally, in the progression of the timeline, because we got to a point where we were sort of circling back, but we're getting into, at the same time, new territory. Let's look at our timeline here. We're talking 11 ABY. That's 11 years after the Battle of Yavin. The same timeline as the previous book. Obviously, we're not moving that far in time. We're on one trilogy. And what you wind up seeing with this is that you're now 11 years later, you're 7 years after Return of the Jedi. That means that Lucas had time to grow. And I talked about this last time. In Return of the Jedi, he defeats the Sith. Vader's dead. Palpatine is dead for now, and then things happened. But he's gone through all that. He's gone through some other storylines, including Thrawn, and it's been 2 years since we encountered Grand Admiral Thrawn already. Time is going by. And then we're getting experience, we're getting some growth, and we finally get into Dark Empire, where the resurrected Emperor is defeated, and much more importantly, Luke evolves in a way that he has never had to evolve before. And so in the Jedi Academy trilogy, we're dealing with an evolved Luke, right? And we've got this important new phase that Luke is going through. Let's look at the ages of our heroes. Luke, I'm going to be discussing Luke a lot in this one, but Luke and Leia, the Skywalker twins, are 30 years old. We're 11 years after we met them at 19. There's been so much growth. Now Leia was always she had done a lot of growing before we even met her, right? But Luke was really a child when we met him, and he's gone through so much. Now, Mara Jade also in this book, and Mara Jade is 28 years old in this book. She's just a couple of years younger than the Skywalker twins. But she, of course, has arguably been through even more than the two of them put together. So she's got a lot that she has gone through. Han Solo is 40 years old in this book. By our measure, he's kind of middle-ish age. Don't think of him really that way, because middle age is going to be a little bit different in the Star Wars universe. But he's still at that, like, that level kind of beyond just being mature. Now he's got a family, but he's also got insight that people 10 years younger than him don't usually have. Which brings us to him being a father and the solo twins, Jason and Jaina. Jason and Jaina are 2. And we're seeing them. They're actually a tiny part of the story. And at this point, we're going to see them get more involved as this story goes on. Lando is 42 years old. Lando is a part of this story as well. There's a wonderful mix here of old and new characters, finding a way to mix old and new storylines. All of those things. We have a really wonderful mix in this book in particular. And part of that involves Lando Calrissian at 42 years old. We have Kip Duran. Kip Duran is 18 years old. Kip is one of my favorite characters from this point on. And by the time that we get into this book, Kip's been through a lot already at 18. But he is only 18, and there's some, what would you say? There's some needed growth with that. We're going to have some major places that we're going to visit, and Vortex is the one that I want to mention the most. There's not a lot of places to mention in this. Yes, Coruscant's still vaguely important, stuff like that. But Vortex is, well, we'll get into it. What's important to know about Vortex, to keep in mind about Vortex, is you need to think about, excuse me, wow, whoa, you need to think about, the beings that live there and what's the major physical attribute. That's what I think is the most important part. We're going to visit Yavin 4, of course, is going to be vitally important again in this book. It's vitally important throughout the trilogy. We're going to be looking at some parts of Yavin 4 that were only really hinted at, and they're going to become important. They're going to be in detail and giving you some idea through the slideshow of what is going to be significant here that really probably you might not have even thought about in the previous iterations of Yavin 4. Not that we're, I mean, yes, we're at 11 ABY. We haven't seen Yavin 4 in, well, we saw it in the last book, but there's an important piece there. And then there's going to be the Cauldron Nebula. Okay. This is going to be a different thing that we're going to see, and it's going to be coming together with elements of the story that make it important. It's not necessarily important all in and of itself, but what happens there and what goes on there, all of that is what's really truly important to the mentioning of the Cauldron Nebula. Just it's not something you might miss the name, but you won't miss what happens there. So be on the lookout for this area of space called the Cauldron Nebula. Major characters and relationships: Admiral Akbar and Leia Organa Solo, and who they are to each other, and what their what they're going to go do together in this book. This is right at the beginning of the book. You're not going to miss it. Akbar is going to have to really deal with his own pride throughout this book, and it's a wonderful little investigation into Akbar's psychology and his feelings about things, how he relates that to other people, how he relates that to the New Republic. Interesting investigation there. And then we talked about Gantorez in the previous book and in the previous book talk. But Gantorez is going to be somebody extremely significant near the beginning of this book. You're not going to miss it. This is not going to be a subtle thing at all. Trust me. But Gantorez is going to be an important person, and his relationship with the Dark Man. This is something that you hear about first in Jedi Search in the first book, and now we're going to explore it further in this book, and it's going to become so significant, so important to everything going on. And you're going to transition, and this is going to feel very natural to transition from the relationship between Gantorez and the Dark Man to the interaction and relationship between Gantorez and Luke Skywalker. This is going to be a really nice continuation of things, or at least I feel so. Okay. And then we have Kip Duran, and I was just struggling for new images of Kip, but you're going to want to be looking for Kip's relationship with a bunch of people, starting with Han Solo. His relationship with Han Solo is it matters. It matters a lot. Okay. Kip's relationship with Luke matters as well. But in a vitally different way. Okay. Like, the relationship with Han versus the relationship with Luke is, I think, purposely set to kind of butt heads towards each other. His relationship, Kip's relationship with Exar Kun, and we're going to find out a lot about this character over the next two books. This character Exar Kun, and it's going to be his story, his lore, and how he is attached to Kip, I think, is really a wonderful little story. There's Exar Kun right there. And you're going to see how incredibly wonderful Kevin J. Anderson and others, Exar Kun, it has just a wonderful lore that was built by Anderson and other people in like comic book series and stuff like that. And you should go look for him in all of that. We also have, Tion. Tion is an interesting character. I haven't really said a lot about her. She is in the first book a little bit, but her discussions and relationship with Kip and how that sort of pans out really helps us. This is all about understanding Kip. And then we have to get into something completely different. And now for something completely different. And we have to talk about a very old relationship. The relationship between Han Solo, Lando Calrissian, and the Millennium Falcon. Okay? we all kind of know the story. And the story is hashed out very much in another trilogy, but that relationship is going to come to a head. And then, and I'm just going to put this relationship out there now. Remember, 28 and 42. So they're both mature adults. Sure, there's a big age gap. But Lando and Mara Jade, Lando Calrissian and Mara Jade, and who they are to each other, who they think they are from each other's perspectives, that sort of thing. Okay? Major events that we are going to see in this book that you need to keep an eye on in this book. And I'm teasing it a little bit here, but I'm not telling you what it is. You'll put it all together as you read. There is going to be a spectacular destruction. Just, it's, and it's not just it is a spectacular destruction. However, it's the first of others to come. And I'm not in this book, even in this trilogy that I can think of. Well, maybe. But down the line, as we travel through the timeline, you're going to see some really spectacular destruction go on. And it's both tragic and wonderful. It's like not wonderful in a lot of senses, but it's they're written very well, and they tug at your heartstrings really well. Kip Duron's aptitude as a student. Now, this came in, I think, a little tiny bit at the end of the first book. However, we're going to go much, much further into it in this book. And who Kip is going to play a big role, but just his strength in the Force itself and his ability to learn it, his ability to call upon it, and who he is as a student. And again, that goes back to his relationship with Luke Skywalker, but not just. And then Exar Kun's influence. The influence that he can have. And you may be wondering, like, oh, who is this guy? I don't know. Why are we even talking about him and his influence? It'll make sense very quickly, very early in the book. It's nothing that you're going to miss. Don't worry about it. Missing it. But Exar Kun's influence that he can have, and his ability to reach, and I keep saying the word influence. I don't know what other word to use. His ability to reach into other people. That's that sort of thing. More major events. Let's talk about the continuing rivalry between Han Solo and Lando Calrissian. This goes right back to the relationship between Han, Lando, and the Millennium Falcon. We heard about this continuing rivalry in The Empire Strikes Back. We got a little bit more lore, but we're going to get a little bit here, and we're going to hear just a little bit about how that all unfolded. And again, if you really want to know how it unfolded, read the Han Solo trilogy. That is the trilogy that I refer to when you're looking for this. But really wonderful trilogy. And Lando, what's really strange about all this, all the goings on here, okay, is the importance of all this, the way that it has always been between Han and Lando, and the way that this particular rivalry over this particular thing has influenced everything and has colored everything. And then Lando is going to make a grand gesture, and I'm sort of teasing who's involved with the grand gesture here in the slideshow. But Lando's going to make this super big gesture, right? And it's going to be, I don't know. It's a thing. Okay. I talked about Kip's aptitude as a student. We're also going to see Kip's power. And so we're not just talking about how well he learns or how deeply he can call on the Force. And we are talking about that a little bit, but we're also talking about just the raw power that he can generate and the power that he wants. Okay. Kip's agenda and how he pulls off demonstrating that he has the particular power that he has now. And I say that hopefully that sounds like a mystery that you want to get into, because that's the point. It's teach you into reading the book. But it's all going to come together as you read the book. I promise you. One other little thing about this book, I don't even know if you don't want any like spoilers at all, you should shut off the book talk right now, because I'm going to give a minor spoiler. I can't help it. Okay. I'm going to tell you guys a little story. I got a hold of Dark Apprentice when it first came out on paperback, and I read it within 2-3 days. It took me like 3 days to read the book. I was ravenous about it. I got it. I read it. And then we have to get to the next book. And Dark Apprentice, let's just say that the book ends. I don't even want to use the word. The book ends and you anticipate more. That is how I'll put it. Maybe those people who shut it off early, maybe they weren't in such dire straits. But then I had to wait a long time for the next book, much longer than I wanted to. And the next book is book 3 of the Jedi Academy trilogy, the final book, Champions of the Force. And I will see you next time for the Champions of the Force book talk. Thank you so much, everybody. I will see you in the next book talk, and may the Force be with you. Bye, everybody.